Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. My name is Leon Jones, and tonight we'll get right back into some politics. And this is something that has been on my mind for quite a bit. I mean, a long time, maybe for the last almost 20 years or even further. And it's going to go with the title of this video. And the topic I'm going to talk about is too many Americans are dependent on government for a lifestyle. Too many Americans are dependent on government for a lifestyle. Now, this is going back to the 77 million people who voted for Donald Trump to change the culture and to shrink the size of government. Now, it sounded good to some of those 77 million people, but what really scares me about them is they've been watching too much of the media. And the media has basically influenced some of them to change their minds when it comes to what Donald Trump and, of course, the Department of Government Efficiency is trying to do. Now, first of all, I'm from the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, and the biggest employer in that area is government. Now, most of the people who actually benefit from government are women, fair and square. A lot of government jobs are paper pushing jobs. Many of them have given women an opportunity to flourish. Now, I don't have the data on me, but I guarantee you there are more men working in the private sector than women. And if you think about it, more women, for the most part, vote Democrat. Now, why do they vote Democrat? Well, they vote Democrat because they've been told by the Democrats about the evil patriarchy. A number of them don't like capitalism. Many of them believe that there's a glass ceiling, racism, sexism. So what the Democrats have done, and this comes back from the Great Society programs when Lyndon B. Johnson was president, it just promised them a way of life. In other words, what I'm getting to is a number of Americans really want the welfare state. Yeah, it sounded good when the majority of individuals went out and voted for Trump. But you had people like Joy Reid, and believe it or not, I don't want anybody to lose their job. But Joy Reid, getting back to her, she wasn't cut out for TV. And the funny thing about Joy Reid, she claimed to be a church-going woman, but she believed in all of the democratic philosophies. She said she went in hard. No, she was against capitalism. You see, when it comes to a number of Black people, many of the Black people out here, they're not going to make it because they believe in government programs as well. Many of them are socialists, communists. They believe that government can make everything equal. But see, what they're talking about is equity, where everybody has the same result. It's like this. When it comes to some of the minorities, like Black people, and I'm not criticizing all Black people, but I'm criticizing a number of them, they believe that the government is going to give them free money. They believe in UBI, universal basic income. Now, they don't tell you that, but you have to look at the actions. Many of them are happy getting a government check. They don't have to work hard for it. Somebody else is paying their way. But in the end, they're still poor. And you have to look at a welfare or a communist state. You see, one thing about communism, and I've done many videos on communism, socialism. You hear a lot of people out there talking about how good communism is. Well, you hear about Stalin, Lenin, Pol Pot. You hear about those guys? How many people they killed? Communism, here's what it is. Communism is where the government controls everything. Now, I'm going to put something out here for you. And maybe the individuals who are dependent on government, they might open their minds up, because when Obama became president, what did he preach? He preached hope. Well, the problem is hope got particularly Black people nowhere. It was all a promise. It's like a mirage. You're in a desert. You're thirsty. You see a reflection off the sand, which is a mirage, and you think it's water. The closer you get to that illusion of water, you don't see water. That's what hope is. So if you really look at communism, and here's how it works, and there's no other way. What communist governments do is this. They have 100% of the resources. So basically what they do, they're going to keep the majority of the resources. I'm going to say 75% of the resources. So the government is going to keep 75% of the resources. Meanwhile, they're going to give their people 25% of the resources, and individuals who are getting 25% of the resources believe that they're getting 100% of the resources, when in essence, they're getting basically crumbs. Now, I was listening to a video, and they had a guy who was in a communist country, and he said something about the bread, and he went to jail. You had a woman in England who was praying. She went to jail. Now, I'm bringing this out because when you have communism, you want government to control every aspect of your life, you're going to be poor. You're not going to have the freedom of speech. The education is, right now, if you think about it, it's all indoctrination. Many of these individuals are going to school, they're being taught by these professors, and many of them, they just want to be social justice warriors. Now, when it comes to working for the government, yes, I know the government, it had the best jobs in the past, because when individuals were working for the government in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, everything was paid for. Certainly, the government is a good paying job now, but we have too many people who are going to school to get degrees in particularly bullshit fields, and they work for the government and they're pushing paper. Bottom line is, for the most part, do we need all those government jobs? No. Now, if you are working for the government and you're in a specialized field like IT or accounting or engineering or a doctor, that's one thing. Now, you are going to need some paper pushers. Now, I'm bringing all this to the forefront because you have, again, Elon Musk. What they're looking at is the fraud that has taken place in the government. But you have a number of people who really now are coming out and saying, well, we want to have the USAID back. We want to have the Department of Education back. You see, what it is the media, people like Joy Reid, people like The View, they've influenced a number of people who don't think for themselves by using fear mongering tactics to get them to believe that, no, maybe we better not change government. Maybe we better keep things as it is, as they are. Now, in order for things to change, individuals are going to have to go through some pain. Now, you have these millennials and you have the Z generation. They're talking about how tough it is out there. But what they don't understand is this. Prior to the Great Depression of 1929, there was no government benefits. In fact, prior to 1913, World War I, there was no income tax. Well, the problem is when all the government programs came into place in the 1930s after the Depression, this is when you got a number of people who believed in government. And yeah, some other dictators out there. I did mention Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, about Fidel Castro, the late Hugo Chavez. These are people that a number of individuals here in this country believe in. And they really want government to solve all their problems. But see, what the powers to be really want in this country, they want a dumb society. They want a dependent society. Why? Because in their mind is, if they can coerce everybody to go on some type of government program, the people in power will stay in power and they will be the ones to live beautiful lives off of the taxes that we pay. Now, there are a number of people who are coming in, senators and congress people, they make almost $200,000 a year. Most people don't even make that. If you're making $200,000 a year, you are in the top 10%. Many of the hardworking people aren't even making that. And see, here's another thing about the government. They're not even encouraging people to actually have businesses, particularly the Democrats. See, what the Democrats want, they talk so highly of unions, they want a lot more peasants out there. In other words, they want more employees. They don't want employers. Why? Because the more employers you have, the more competition you have. And see, most people on the Democratic side don't even know about capitalism. I mean, I was listening to Jasmine Crockett on one of the liberal news programs the other day, and she was saying, I feel a great recession coming. You feel a recession? Now, if the jobs report has already come out and January was a bad month for jobs, well, you can't blame that on Trump. He was only in power for 10 days of that. That's still Biden. Now, if you look at the economy when Trump came in 2016, 2017, I know Obama wants to take credit for that economy, but here's the thing. Obama didn't have such great policies either. Now, Obama did inherit the recession that George Bush created with the countrywide lending. You're giving people houses that they don't qualify for. See, you're having all these people depending on some type of program, but they're always going to be poor. Government keeps you poor. You have these people who think they're getting free money. Now, what DOGE is doing is they're looking at the fraud. Now, if you're really going to cut some government, this is going to sting, but you're going to have to cut the defense budget because that's right around 20%, 26% of the budget. Whereas the government jobs, and you can look that up for yourself, The government jobs, they're basically 4 to 5%. And even welfare, if you think about it, does everybody really get welfare? No, it's probably about 2%. But see what the Democrats want. They want everybody on welfare. They want us to be dependent on government from cradle to grave so they stay in power. And when you have so many people on that government dole, somebody's got to pay for everything. And you always hear the Democrats talk about the wealthiest 1%, 1%. Well, here's the problem. There are not enough people who are 1%ers that can take care of everybody else. Now, the 1%ers, they can hide their money utilizing tax shelters. So who's going to get hit with all the taxes? The working people, because 85% of the people are working people. And it's also going to be tough for small businesses, depending on what your business really is. So, how do we get there to this government dependency? Again, it all started back in the 60s, actually started back in the 30s. Now, what the government jobs do allow, the government jobs do allow students who have student loan debt to pay some of their debt. Now, I'm a veteran. Now, I never thought being a veteran should be part of DEI, because when you're a veteran, you sacrificed yourself for this country, whether you were in combat or not. Now, thinking about it, there was a stat out, I was watching News Nation, and don't let numbers fool you, but that stat said 28%, and I believe it was for the VA, for the veterans. Well, 28% of the people who were working for the VA are veterans. 28%. Now, you think about that number. 28%. That's almost 1 in 4. So the other 72%, they're basically civilians. So 28% is not a large number. See, we're always trying to utilize the veterans to make them part of an argument for the Democrats. But they don't quote the numbers right. You have a lot of people who stay in government service for a long time and they get their pensions paid for. You have a lot of people, and this is true. This is why you have hoods who live in the projects. It's a cycle. Why? Because it's easy. That's the whole problem. Now, in order for this culture to really change, you're going to have to cut the dependency of government. I mean, let the states run their own schools. When it comes to illegals here, they were attracted to the government programs. Now, granted, Americans couldn't get on those programs, but you had the illegals getting $13,000, $15,000. They were living in hotels. They were comfortable. And so being dependent on government makes people too comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you're also you get complacent. So your mindset is always, I want somebody to give me something. John F. Kennedy had this old saying, it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. Now, there is a meaning behind that, but you have a number of people, particularly Black people, they don't believe they have to do anything for this country. Now, yes, Black people have had it harder than everybody else. But you know, when black people had it hard, they flourished. When Black Wall Street from the 20s on up to the 60s was basically alive and well, even though it was destroyed, and even so many other towns like um, Roswell and Omaha, Nebraska, and Wilmington, North Carolina, there were a number of Black Wall Streets out there. People are just looking at Tulsa because Tulsa is the one that is always heard about in the educational institutions. But Black people flourished. And really what happened, I'm going to believe this, the low class white people use the white girls, the trashy white girls, to snitch on a black man. I believe that it happened with Emmett Till, because even that person that had claimed that Emmett Till sexually assaulted her, she admitted before she passed that he didn't do it. So this man was murdered based off of a lie. And according to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and again, Rosewood in Florida, where blacks flourished, there was a white woman who lied about being sexually assaulted. Low class whites. And that was the jealousy, because see, the low class whites, they weren't taken in by the upper class whites. See, again, when you look at everything, white people work with classism. And classism is it's not racism because of skin color, but elite white people have their own class. And they want to maintain their elitism. So if you're not on their level, you're not going to join their club. But when it comes to all these government programs, this is what made women feel very powerful when they were getting handouts. That's why they will tell you they don't need a man. Bottom line is, when an entity that I'm paying taxes to is giving you a check for basically doing nothing, of course you don't need a man, because your entity is the man. And see, the government has really pushed a lot of men out of the household, because the government is the husband and the dad. And what the government does, it creates this false independent woman. Because if you look at it now, most of the individuals who are looking at the government jobs as their life are women. Women, particularly white women. So it's not so easy when you have to compete. And see, with government, dependency, individuals are less innovative, which means we don't have too many inventors. When it comes to entrepreneurship, we really don't have too many entrepreneurs, because it takes work to create a business. You have to know the laws when it comes to business. Most of them don't know the laws. Most of them don't want to do anything. And then you have a number, and I've seen a number of these young ones. Yes, is it tough now to be on your own because of the cost of everything? Absolutely. And see, the Democrats want high prices because they're waiting for 2026 to try to win the House back. Bottom line is, many of us were always promised by the Republicans, oh, yeah, we like smaller government. That promise never came to fruition because they were part of the club. Now we get a president that really wants to trim the size of government. You get individuals, they really don't want it because their life is dependent on that government job. Well, let me tell you something. Here in America, we're not collectivists, we're individual. And in this country, if you can't compete, you don't need to be here. And when it comes to capitalism, of course, and I'm just going to say this again, a number of women don't believe in capitalism because they will tell you that the money doesn't trickle down. Money's not going to trickle down. That's not capitalism. Here in America, you take a risk by starting a business and you hire people to work for you. That's your paycheck. You're going to get paid based on the market. That's capitalism. Now, have you had some crony capitalists? I mean, I hear the Democrats talking about Elon Musk. What about George Soros? George Soros, he's paid salaries for a lot of AGs. I know he paid for one in St. Louis. I don't know if she's still an AG. Philadelphia. I believe in New York, there is a George Soros AG. Maybe Fonnie Willis, her salary is being subsidized by George Soros. But nobody's talking about George Soros, but they're talking about Elon Musk. Remember when George Soros bought 200 radio stations? Because he wanted liberals, in my humble opinion, on those radio stations. And the bottom line here in America is too many Americans must change their mindset when it comes to depending on government. Now, again, living is about making decisions, and we all make mistakes. Yes, the government should be a hand up, not a hand out. We are using it as a way to live. That's the problem. And see, the Democrats, what they really want, they want people to vote for them by saying, well, we're going to take care of you from cradle to grave. And this has been going on basically since the 60s. I mean, you had a system called Cloward and Pivens. Now, what's Cloward and Pivens? Well, Cloward and Pivens were two professors from, I believe, from Harvard University. And what they wanted to do, they wanted to collapse the welfare system and start something new. Well, what they really wanted, they wanted a system where we all depended on government. I know down in Atlanta, I believe 1,000 Black women were getting UBI, Universal Basic Income. And what the government programs have done, it's split families apart. And this is why in this country, the Democrats, they don't want families. I mean, you hear people, again, like Joy Reid, and unfortunately, Joy Reid thinks she's going to come out here and work as a podcaster. I mean, you look at Roly Poly Martin. I mean, this guy's a crying ass nigga or a bitch ass nigga, whatever you want to call him. He doesn't look good out there. And he needs to go to the gym, but he's out there spewing his haterade out there. And let me tell you, young Black people, something. Stop listening to these old niggas out there. Stop listening to them. Now, you can listen to guys like me. Yeah, I'm a Gen Xer, but some of these older Gen Xers who are around my age and so many older baby boomers, no, you tell them to kick sand. And you have other people out there who really think they know what's going on, and they don't. And unfortunately, when it comes to YouTube, and I will say this, even when I speak, if I'm wrong about something, let me know because I don't know everything either. I'm just going based off of what I see because you just have this dependency on government, which is also brought out the entitlement mindset as well. And with all that, now you have a society as well that is, they're not problem solvers. They feel everything is about them. Me. Yeah, I'm singing. Me. That's what they're doing. Singing. It's all about them. And they think the government is going to provide them with these wonderful lives. Government is not. And if you're listening to people like Jasmine Crockett out there and Kerosene Maxine Waters, you're going to be disappointed. Because in the end, they're about making their own money. And they're about to keep the democratic or the socialism / communism alive and well. Those people, the Democrats. Who's running the Democrats? You got that Negro Hakeem Jeffries, sweet as hell. Oh, he doesn't even look like a man. Cory Booker. The women are running that Democratic Party. And let me tell you something. I'm not saying all women, but when you put a number of them in power, they'll run it to the ground. And they will not build it back up. Why? Because in their mind, and see, depending on government, it's got a number of women that hate men. Because they believe that the government will make everything very equal. Equality has never existed, and equality will never exist. It's all an illusion. This is what I was telling you about the American dream. The American dream is not objective, it's subjective because you have to create the lifestyle based on what you can afford. This is how capitalism works. Everybody's not going to be able to afford a Lamborghini or a Rolls Royce. It doesn't happen. It ain't going to happen, Cap. Happen. But you can be comfortable if you want to. If the regulations are lifted and the tax code is much better, we get more money. People can start businesses. Bottom line is, you have a number of people who can't manage their money, and they make a lot of money. You know, I hear Kendra J on her show, and those women, they're always dependent on the government or somebody else to pay their way. And these are grown-ass women. But they'll go out, they'll make their kids by individuals that don't even have anything going for themselves, but they want somebody else to pay for their mistakes. No. Bottom line is this. As a man, as an adult, government is not going to save you. It's not. Yeah, you'll get a paycheck. And let me tell you what else. When you're always dependent on the government, or you're always dependent on the paycheck, you're not going to get too much of a raise in the workforce. So here's what's going to happen. This is when you start running up credit card debt. You got a number of people going out there buying cars that they can't afford, and you're always going to have a monthly payment. And what is going to happen is now you have a higher debt to income ratio. You're working hard, but you don't have any income because it's all going to somebody else. That's the problem. And see, government is always going to give you the basics, just like healthcare. You got people in Canada who have to wait in line. if they have a real problem. That's why people from Canada come into this country for doctors. So you think that when the government gives you something, it's free? Because something is free in your mind doesn't mean it's good. It's controlled. I mean, you think about it. You got a number of people who've been living in the projects, cycles and cycles of people. Well, they might think in their minds that they're paying hardly nothing, but look what kind of community you live in. Crime ridden, drug ridden. Now, I know that the government, they put the drugs in the black community. In fact, in my humble opinion, and I'm just giving you my humble opinion, the projects that were built or the public housing that was built in the 1940s in all of the cities, it's like a concentration camp. You know, back in the days, they had Cabrini Green. Baltimore had its high-rise projects. So did DC. Murphy Homes, that was in Baltimore. Used to be a Black Wall Street in Richmond known as Churchill. That's bad. You have a lot of public housing. And in that public housing, it's crime riddled. The families are not stable. It's drug riddled. I mean, it's a place that you almost have to duck your head every day from a bullet that's coming from somebody's car because of a bad drug transaction or something. But the bottom line, when you depend on government, you're always going to get the short end of the stick. And really, I just don't believe a number of Americans really want that change because they're comfortable with somebody else giving them something. That's the problem. And what this administration is trying to do is tell people you got to tighten your belts. There is a lot of spending out there. Now, of course, and I want you all to understand this, there was this rumor going out there that they're going to give us $5,000 of our money back. Don't believe that until you see it. And I know Jasmine Crockett said that $1,400 that was a stimulus money, it wasn't that much. She tried to say that Joe Biden gave that to us. No, Joe Biden gave us $600. Donald Trump gave us the $1,400. And see, this is what the media is going to do. The media is still going to try to influence, and you have to be strong-minded because the media is going to try. The media is a scam. You know, when I did my scam series, what happens with a scam? Well, generally, when you have a scam, it gives you this promise, this hope. And what that scam does, it gets you to act quickly. Or what you're looking at, because it's too good to be true, it's going to be gone. Well, that's what the government does. The government has made a lot of promises that it doesn't keep because the government is not looking out for you. They're looking out for themselves and their constituents. And the bottom line, when you don't educate yourself, the Democrats love it. They want ignorant people. They want people like Jasmine Crockett out there to tell you that there's a recession coming when she doesn't know anything. She tried to say she was good in economics. All economics is supply and demand. People are talking about the price of eggs. Well, that bird flu happened during Joe Biden's administration. And see what Joe Biden did before Trump came into office, Joe Biden wanted to make it so Trump would have it hard. So what Trump wanted to do, he couldn't actually do it right away because Biden left them with a whole lot of shit. First thing he wanted to do was get the illegals out. Why? Because you get the illegals out, well, you can cut them off the welfare doles. Then you got the blue cities out here. And I like how Trump confronted that mayor in Maine. I'm that governor in Maine. She said she wasn't going to comply. Now, guess what? Now, Trump is going to have the Maine Department of Education investigate. And guess what else is going to happen? And Maine's a small state. They get about maybe $5 billion, $7 billion for roads, everything. Well, when they don't get that money, guess what's going to happen? Their economy is going to tank. I mean, yes, the government can help the economy if the money is spent right. Like if you're building roads, you work for a state DOT, jobs are created. Money can go into creating more vertical infrastructure like buildings and residential areas. Money can be utilized. When I'm saying depending on government, I mean collecting a paycheck from the government. And no, not all government employees, slough off either. But you do have a number of them, particularly for women. White women to begin with, because white women have benefited off of affirmative action more than any other woman. But the bottom line is, you got too many people who are too stupid to really see what's going on out there. Got to get out in the streets. Yeah, people are struggling. People are always going to struggle. And even if Kamala Harris were president, you have to be able to tighten up your belt. See, the problem is people are blaming the president. I mean, now, do I blame Biden for what happened? No. Do I blame Obama? Just because I didn't agree with him politically, the bottom line is you do have to look at your government because sometimes they can dictate the culture based on the policies that they want. Now, the Democrats want a libertine society. They don't, they want the benefits of traditionalism, but they don't want traditionalism. In other words, they don't want the man running the household. They'd rather have somebody sweet instead of a heterosexual. And here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you all something too. Don't think that the Democrats don't want to cut anything either. But I'm going to put this out here. And you really got to think about this. Because technically, when you don't have heterosexual households making children, the birth rate gets a little lower, and you have adoption by others out there, other alternative lifestyles who got to utilize a surrogate or adoption or in vitro fertilization or something like that. Well, the bottom line is many of those individuals aren't going to have too many kids. So guess what's going to happen? Those kids are eventually going to grow up. And guess what they're going to be off of? It's not going to be anything for them. Why? Because it's not going to be enough of them producing taxes out here. And the Democrats really, they don't want Generation A or Generation B. They don't want them to get Social Security. See, what happened is the baby boomers, and not all the baby boomers, but some of the baby boomers, they're still running a lot. I'm a Gen Xer, and we've always had to work under baby boomers or under silent generation. They're the ones that are sucking everybody dry, the baby boomers. Yeah, you might have some Gen Xers, but even the early Gen Xers, some of them, thank goodness I wasn't on that train, but a number of them think just like the old baby boomers. Government, that's what they want. And that's what people really in their hearts want. They want a government check. They don't want to work. Now, to some out there, I will say this. There are jobs out there that aren't really paying a lot of money, even when you have education. Because, see, it used to be when you got a degree, you were ahead of the pack. Now, everybody's going out and getting a degree, whether it's online or whether you're going to a brick and mortar school. Here's what's happening. Now you have a saturation of degrees, and guess what? You might as well just take all the degrees away from people because you got the same type of society. So what's going to make people with degrees different? They have to get a specialized degree. Like, you got to be an engineer, got to be an accountant. You may look up, you can be a teacher, you can be a doctor, a lawyer, fields that require a professional license. So if you don't get into a field that requires a license, your degree ain't shit. And these colleges out here, and I went to college, these colleges, they're teaching kids all this communism. That's why these kids hate America now. That's why these kids don't make decisions. And it's been happening again for the last 60 years. The colleges have infected a number of these children out here. And you have a number of them who are my age. I'm 60, so you have a number of them who are 60, 70 years old who have been infected by the indoctrination of college. College right now is not a good place. And if you're going to do college, do it online where you don't have to deal with a professor. And if you're going to deal with a professor, look at that professor's background. Look, and I'm going to tell you this. Go to ratemyprofessor.com. See what past students gave that professor. And that should tell you, do I want to take this professor or do I not want to take this professor? Because your education system is really out of control. They'd rather teach transgenderism instead of finances. They'd rather be politically correct to make people feel good instead of teaching you how the real world works. That's the big problem. And when you have a lot of people coming out, most of your Democrats, and you have a number of people who work for the government, unless they're the older women who came up back in the, let's say in the 70s and are still working. Some of them might be retired now, or even in the 80s, or even in the 90s, and they're at 30 years, they're getting a pension. Well, many of them now have degrees. Now, of course, you can get a little bit more leverage if you're a veteran, and you should be able to get in if you're a veteran because veterans work for the government. And if you think about it, people in the military, yeah, there are problems with defense spending. There are. But the bottom line, how much are you paying your soldiers and your sailors out there? They don't get paid by the hour. They basically get paid on the 1st and the 15th, and they get paid by the rank, time, and grade. I know. I've served my time in the military. I was in there in the Clinton and George Bush days where they were cutting the military. What I'm trying to get to you all is when it comes to what's going on now, they're trying to shrink the size of government because when the private sector gets bad, what happens? They start cutting people, and the market is dictating everything. See, if your demand is higher than your supply, that's the problem. And that's what economics is. Look at it as supply and demand. The more supply you got, the less demand you have, and you can keep your prices down. Why? Because you have an abundance. But when you don't have an abundance, that's when you have to raise the prices. And you have to look at what's going on. We still got that war going on in Ukraine. We've given them money. We've given Africa money. You know, we're taxpayers, and I want to know where all my money is going. And when it comes to welfare, nobody's mentioning this. I don't like corporate welfare either. Yeah, you got some companies who are depending on welfare, like when George Bush was in power, countrywide, those loan companies, no, you should have let them fail instead of giving them money. Yeah, I don't like welfare going to corporations either because it's money that they didn't make. And it's money that they could be abusing. That's what the problem is. So unless the American people change your mind and say, hey, look, I got to get out there and actually hump, I got to get some skills, many of them are going to be lazy, no matter who you vote for. Because there's some red states out here too. Yeah, they voted for Donald Trump, but I guarantee there are a number of them living on a welfare dole too. And by the way, so you'll know this, it's more white people on welfare. It is. More white people on welfare. Why? Because it's a lot more white people. But you get a number of black people. Most black people out here, they're comfortable with getting a check from the government. That's why a number of black people, particularly when it comes to the military, a number of black people aren't patriotic. It's another way to get a check. That's what they're doing. Because they don't like this country. And the Democrats don't like this country. They like the benefits of this country, where they can sit on their ass and get something for nothing. That's all they want. They don't want to lift their hand. They want somebody else to do all the work for them. And they are teaching all the children now to depend on government. That's the equality that they want. Let government handle everything. I don't want to put my life in the hands of the government. I want to be able to use my mind to create something. Well, when you're on that government dole all your life, you think you're getting ahead, you're not getting ahead. If you're constantly paying for a car every month, you're paying for credit cards, you're mismanaging your money. Doesn't matter if the government is giving you money or you're getting money from your employer. The bottom line is you, as an individual, are a poor manager of money. It's just that simple. So what I'm applying to you all here is a little bit more common sense. Because there are just enough people out there, they don't have enough common sense. And when it comes to the media, when you let people like Sonny Houston, Joy Reid, and it's funny, I forgot her. It was in somebody leave it in the comment section. It might come back. It might come back to me. But this liberal white lady, Rachel Maddow. You know, she said Joy Reid got fired or lost her show because of racism. No, people weren't watching it. I didn't want to get on and hear some angry black woman. No, I'd laugh, but people weren't watching it. And you know, when it comes to these news corporations, guess what they got to make? Money. And guess who got her show canceled? Wasn't the man. She was a woman, just like Karen Bass. She had to fire the fire chief or some chief out there for those fires out in LA. So the bottom line is, when it comes to DEI as well, you want the best person for the job. All DEI created was false diversity. And that's what the Democrats are based off of, these coalitions, false diversity. Everything is racist. Everything is sexist. On the real issue out here, and you're a man, everything is going against the heterosexual man. It's feminism. That's the problem. Got to stop putting a lot of women in power because women believe in government. That's where the problem is. Women don't talk about how independent they are, but they don't want to go out and work. If they had a chance to sit on their ass and get a check, they do it. But they don't want to go out here and work. I don't blame them either. Got to deal with a boss that's always, and there's nothing wrong. You got to meet deadlines. But many of them, they don't understand that structure. So a number of women don't have structure. They think it's all about them. So they're going to try to make policies according to them. And then you hear the word gynocracy flying around. Well, that's policy. And I believe this is why Donald Trump won, because there are a number of guys that didn't have a clue what was going on, but they said, well, this is a man. I don't want a woman in there. Part of me didn't want a woman in there either, because I just don't believe that a number of women are capable of running anything. If you don't believe me, look at, what is her name? Tiffany Gilliard or whatever her name is over there in Dalton, Illinois. There was one in Rochester, New York, can't run anything. New Orleans, Atlanta, Baltimore had one, DC. Now, this is going to sound crazy. You got that crazy ass mayor, Brandon Johnson. He's even worse than Lori Lightfoot was. But you know what? Just like I'm talking about government dependency, well, you know what's going to happen? Chicago's going to vote for another mayor. Now, prior to that, I think he died in office. He was a mayor. Was his name Harold Washington in Chicago? Well, you got a lot of people. You got a lot of black people. Gary has a black mayor. You look at all these cities run by black people. They're running to the ground because you have a number of black people who are stealing the money. But you have to look at what's going on out here. And it's the mindset. Yeah, America voted to change the culture and downsize government. But see what the Democrats kept doing, they kept on going on TV, trying to influence weak-minded people who were on the side of Trump. That's what they did. And it's probably going to work. And this is why we're going to have to get right back out there this year and maintain the Senate and pick up some more House seats. That's what we got to do on our side. Even if we have a slim majority, get the House, keep the House. Republicans are going to have to keep both houses of Congress. Both houses. And they're going to have to win the presidency again in 2028. Because I know what Trump wants to do. Is it going to happen in 4 years? Probably not. Because it took 4 years to reverse what he did when he was the 45th president. Now, if he has the right Congress, might work for him. I mean, I believe he's going to do everything that he can, but we must educate ourselves and we must change our mindset, because it's not the duty of the president to give us anything. It's the duty of the American people to understand what's going on. And understand what's going on is to change our mindset by not being so government dependent. Because in America, you have to compete. And this is what women have a hard time doing. They don't want to compete, but they want to talk the mess when everything is already established for them. They want to run around saying, well, I don't need you. Yeah, when you're getting a handout, of course you don't need a man. But the bottom line, you take that handout away, because the people who are going to be affected from the loss of some of these government jobs is going to be the women. And that's the truth. Bottom line. I mean, I've lost jobs before. But see, I have a skill to get out there and find another one. You got to hustle. And yes, is there still racism out here? It's not like it used to be, but it's still out there. And in the government, I will say this, still a good old boy network in the government. It is. It's a good old girl network in the government as well. So if you're not part of the club, no matter where you work, it's not going to work out for you. And that's how the workplace is. The workforce is nothing more than a giant high school where you got a lot of gossip, a lot of cliques, got a lot of dependent people. And Americans are still dependent on government. And this is just my opinion, because I'm going to close it out right now. If you really want change here in this country, and as individuals, what we have to do, number one, we have to understand how this country works. And number two, stop being dependent on government. And what do you have to do? Change your mindset. Because in the end, if you're always going to be depending on something, they're going to control you. But if you can go get it yourself, you can get more of what you want, and you can be free. And this is what I'm going to tell you. You can either live to the Communist Manifesto, where you can be dependent on the government and you get very little, or you can be part of a capitalistic system where you are a thinking person and you can innovate and you can thrive. Because in the end, you have to think about it this way. You're either going to be free or you're going to be on a plantation. Bottom line, the choice is yours. What do you want out of life? You want to depend on government for your lifestyle? Or do you want to make your own way? You make that choice. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some STEM content, I will be on tomorrow. I believe I'm going to do one on standard operation procedures when it comes to inspection of a construction site. Stay tuned for that. But here's where you can find me, because on the QCIS, on that channel, I do give you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And on this channel, I give you a full head of steam about what's going on in the world politically, give you news, and I talk about some social topics. That's why here on the 401 Talk Zone radio show, you can find me here on YouTube, you can find me on X, on Twitter, you can find me on Rumble, and you can find me on Truth Social. And for the QCIS channel, on that channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. You can find me on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn. But in the end, you can listen to this. Always be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Know that the sun always rises in the east, it sets in the west. And if it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. But if you don't like the shoe, change it. And once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.